I'm here with Ciara Sterling, who's the Head of Community Inclusion, Yarra Valley Water, and we're talking about channeling change from a customer perspective. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You've been 15 years working on these initiatives to support customers dealing with family violence and financial struggles. Let's start with family violence.
Yeah.
Why is that an issue for the water industry?
Yeah, look, I think when you join the water industry, you don't think you're going to be working on issues like family violence. The reality is we had a Royal Commission into family violence in Victoria, and out of that Royal Commission came a whole lot of evidence that utilities have a really big part to play in stopping some of these issues around family violence. We see perpetrators using things like debt to attack the victims and also to hold them away from being able to escape from that circumstance. So we've seen a lot of instances where perpetrators have rung up and tried to put the debt in the name of their partner.
So I might have a huge water bill that has been accumulating over some time.
Yeah.
How might somebody transfer their debt to their abused partner?
So if both people own the property, then they can have both names on that account. So it's very easy for the perpetrator to, they have all the points of ID, they have all the ID check for their partner, so they can actually associate that debt to that person by just having a phone call.
So they ring up and say, look, I'm not at that property anymore.
That's right.
It should be in my wife's name.
That's
and
right.
Therefore, she's saddled
with that debt. Yeah.
What are the other safety issues that an operator, in the past might have had no idea about when they're dealing with a perpetrator?
Look, there's lots of safety issues. As we talked about with privacy, if you've been married to someone, you probably do know their date of birth and their driver's license details and some of those points of safety that we normally check for privacy. So we have had instances across multiple industries where perpetrators have rung up or had somebody else ring up and pretend to be the person to get access to their forwarding address or their personal details so that they can find them. It's really tricky with this digital age. Digital innovation is fantastic and it gives us so much opportunity, but it also can create a risk of people being able to access their ex-partner's accounts and try and again find details of where they're currently living or their current phone numbers.
And can you give me an example of that, of somebody thinking, well, this person has left me, the victim has left me, I want to track her down.
Yeah.
And I know her driver's license number.
Yeah.
I know our old address.
Yeah.
I ring the water utility, and what do I do?
Yeah, so look, we've had a number of these instances. One that happened recently, which sticks out in my mind. The perpetrator rang our offices and said he was actually again trying to access debt, put debt in his partner's name. And he rang up and said, oh, my name's on this account, it should be my wife's name on this account. So can you just transfer all that debt over, and there should be a forwarding address there, and we just need to access that information. And we had already had this customer flagged as being a family violence customer. So we have a system process in place at Yarra Valley Water where we can flag the account, and that means anytime someone rings through about that account, it comes straight to the case management team. So they are then just a bit more aware that there could be something going on with this account, and so they're very conscious of the safety of that account. And then he rang back again. So this time he pretended to be the real estate agent. He tried to explain that as the agent, he was allowed to connect new tenants to the property. Again, we knew that this was not the case, so we explained we wouldn't be able to do that. And then the third time he called back pretending to be the woman in question. Now, we knew that it wasn't her, so because the way our system works, if we've flagged an account as a family violence case, any call that comes in from anywhere across the business will actually be directed straight to the case manager for that person. So it enables us to be a bit smarter and a bit more aware of the safety stuff when that call comes through.
And did it end up back in court? Were you able to act on that information?
Yeah, so after we'd spoken to him a number of times, we were able to contact the refuge. So we knew that the woman in question was in a family violence refuge. We were able to contact her caseworker at that refuge and explain what was happening. And then they were able to use that information to take him back to court because he was in breach of his restraining order. And we found out after that he was also doing the same thing with a number of other sort of utility providers.
And how did Yarra Valley come to the conclusion that this was an issue they needed to act upon? Because presumably at the operator level, there would have been an awareness that this sort of thing happens, but maybe not in senior management ranks.
Yeah, look, we have some really amazing frontline staff, and in our customer support team, our water care team, which looks after those people who are probably more vulnerable, they started coming to us and saying, we're hearing a lot of stuff at the moment and we're really worried about it. We're hearing an increase in family violence situations. So we've been working with a number of community organisations around these issues, and then post the Royal Commission, the Essential Services Commission had been given responsibility to act on some of these things for the water industry. So I was lucky enough to be seconded into the Essential Services Commission to help them work on this collaboratively with community and with our staff and with different water companies across Melbourne. And one of the most important things in dealing with family violence is raising awareness. So we took our entire business on a journey. We had live calls of family violence incidents coming into the business and a number of case studies. And we ran the training through the whole business from the board down. So, we played those calls to our board and to our executive management team to help them understand this is happening to our staff. This is happening to our customers and this is happening here. So we need to address it. And to their credit, they jumped on board and were fully supportive of the work that we did.
You've got a specialist team, you've had training across the organisation. You're going to the trouble of ringing family violence victims in refuges, dealing with the police, I imagine, and the court system. Yeah. Again, why do you see that as a front and centre responsibility for a utility?
I think we are an integral part of our community. We are the most essential of essential services. And we have a big responsibility, and that is to ensure safe water and sanitation for our community. But it's also to ensure that we don't do anything that could put a customer at risk. And unfortunately, the way it is today, perpetrators are very, very smart in the way that they manipulate systems. So we really need to take stock of that and be at the forefront of making sure that we are supporting the people that we work with.
Let's turn to financial hardship. How much of an issue is that? People struggling to pay their water bill and then racking up considerable debt when they're unable to?
So look, across our community at the moment and across our country, over 50% of people are financially vulnerable. And we've currently got...
Over 50%?
Over 50%. So
and what do you mean by
that?
Vulnerable?
So if one circumstance changes, so they've got financial stress, if they have one circumstance change in their life, that could actually trigger them into financial hardship. So it could be a job loss or a death or a car accident. Something that we don't expect and see coming can actually trigger us to fall into hardship at any time. Because I think most of us live to our means. So, we have our income and we have our spending. We may have kids in private schools and have car loans. If you lose your job at that point, it takes a bit of time to get a job. Your debt's raising and raising and raising. And so by the time you actually connect back in with work, you've got such a large debt overhanging. We see now much more, middle class type people coming through our hardship program than ever before, because all of us are just one step away.
And so how do you work with that knowledge, and what does best practice look like?
So we know that there's a good 10 to 13% of people in real financial stress at the moment. We've got, from research that Yarra has done recently, show that about 43% of customers are paying utility bills on some form of credit and not for the frequent flyer points, simply because they don't have that cash at the time. So we want to make sure that everybody can access water. It's a really important part of what we do in all of our businesses across Australia. So the biggest benefit that we can provide is creating awareness of what support's available. Every organisation offers things like payment arrangements, there's government grants and concessions, there's ways we can help people, but the starting point of that is actually knowing they're in trouble. And often you find that people are a bit embarrassed when this is going on in their lives. So it's providing a way that people can actually communicate with us. At Yarra Valley Water, we have the water care program, and that was specifically designed around taking the stigma. So it's not hardship, it's not that you're in trouble, it's not that you're in crisis, it's just here's stuff that everyone can access if you need assistance with your bills. So I think building awareness that stuff's available is pretty critical.
You're involved beyond the water industry with a range of other essential service providers. You've had that experience in working alongside the Royal Commission into Family Violence. And there's also this initiative called the Thriving Communities Partnership.
Yes.
Tell me about that, and tell me about what you have learned about brokering partnerships to make the world a better place.
The Thriving Communities Partnership started with a roundtable in 2016. I've been working across this sector and many other sectors in vulnerability for about 15 or so years. And we often bump into our colleagues in banking and telecommunications and energy at a number of events. And we always have the same conversations. You know, well, what are you seeing with your customers in your community? Or we're seeing things like family violence, or multicultural communities, or issues that are facing our Aboriginal communities at the moment. And all of these businesses are doing lots of stuff, so lots of bits and pieces, but it's all siloed. And so every year we'd get together at these conferences and say, oh, we should do something together. We should get together. And then every year we'd, high five and go on our merry way and bump into each other the next year and have the same conversation. So in Yarra Valley Water in 2016 decided to have a roundtable. It started off with just going to be our friends from water, and then the rest of our colleagues across industries heard about it. So Pat McCafferty, my managing director, was very generous. I originally said, I'm just going to have a few people over for a coffee, and then it was like, oops, I need to hire a hall. So we had 130 people coming from across Australia, and I think that day showed us that there was a real appetite for change here and a really strong appetite for collaboration. That grew over, we had a number of initiatives that came out of that, and it culminated in the Thriving Communities Partnership. That now has 150 organisations from across Australia participating. All of our major banks, energy companies, telcos, water companies are involved. And we're also communicating with, and part of our partnership is the community organisations across Australia and government. So it's a cross-sectoral initiative aimed at ensuring everybody has fair access to the essential services they need to thrive in a modern Australia. So that means not just food and shelter, it's telecommunications, it is insurance, it's banking, it's transport. And we know that with family violence, for example, if someone's experiencing family violence, we don't want them to have to tell their story 50 times to 50 different companies, in just the hope that they can get assistance from both an economic abuse and physical safety. So what we're looking for is one pathway for people. So we're looking for businesses across Australia to leave competition at the door, which is a big step for businesses these days, and say that when it comes to financial vulnerability and hardship, we're not going to compete, we're only going to collaborate. And we're seeing some really amazing initiatives come out of that project.
Wonderful work. Thank you so much for telling me about it, Ciara.
Thank you.